Hi and welcome to the start of Administrative Law. These videos I'll be posting each week as an introduction to the material, and it'll be a way of, I guess, giving you a guide as to how to approach it, things to look for, things to think about. These are not video lectures. Video lectures have very little point to them, and we know from data logs that students don't view them. In fact, we know to a matter of within seconds that that people don't view videos that are longer than, I think it's 7 minutes and 21 seconds. Really, the most realistic way to learn is, of course, for you to look at the material, to engage with the material, and work through the material. And we'll be giving you videos each week to get you started on that process, and throughout we'll also look at some key concept videos where we want to drill into a concept in a bit more depth and talk about something that may not come out clearly in the readings, that we want to connect into the bigger picture. So that's what these videos are going to be. They're not going to be very, very long, and hopefully they will be useful for you in working through your study guide and reading the material in the textbook. The subject relies pretty heavily on the textbook, as well as, of course, the reading guide, and you'll be expected to have a familiarity with that for the assessment in the subject. Now, this is not a subject where the study guide replicates what's in the textbook. Otherwise there'd be no point having the textbook if you've got a summary of it in the study guide. The material is quite different, so you will need to make sure you have access to the textbook and you read it. In the materials, the study guide materials we provide, we're really going to be focusing on the nitty-gritty of how the law works, how the administrative law operates. The textbook's quite a good one because it looks at the issues and it looks at, well, what's happening, what's changing. There are a few recommended textbooks in the study guide, and they cover the same sort of material as the study guide and in more depth than that. And we'll talk about those a little bit more in the workshops. But if you need more detail, there are textbooks that go into the admin law authorities in more detail. Although this isn't really a kind of area that is very strong on precedent. It's somewhere where a lot of the practice of administrative law doesn't occur through the courts, and what you need to know is more about the legislation. Anyway, so we'll look at those textbooks, but the textbook that's set as the core one, the Groves one, is actually looking at the way the system's changing, evolving and developing, and the challenges that it's facing. So I think you'll find it's a bit more interesting than a typical law textbook, and it is a series of essays that have a point to them. And then I personally, I mean, obviously a law textbook isn't going to be a thrill-a-minute kind of page-turner, but I picked this one because it's actually really quite interesting in a way that often law textbooks are not. Okay, so first week in the workshop, we're really going to be focusing on making sure we're all on the same page, making sure that we all know what we're doing and where we're going and what the assessment's about. The first task is on the discussion forums, and that's asking you to think about a particular conflict, a bureaucratic conflict that you've been involved in, or you know people that have been involved in, and starting to think about what are the issues and principles that are involved in the regulation of these conflicts. This is what we'll be talking about this term. We'll be looking at those sorts of issues, but I want you to start to think about, you know, when's the last time you had a run-in with the DMV or the local council, or even customer service in a commercial to private enterprise, and what are the issues for you as lawyers? You've had a year and a half, most of you, to start thinking about what it is to think like a lawyer and how lawyers operate. What are the things? What are the frameworks that we think around justice, and what fairness is in particular when we're dealing with systems rather than individual people? And that's going to be the major theme that runs throughout this course, because we're going to look at what the law, as I said, and look at the way the law is currently being shaped, because this is an area that is developing, and it's an area which is changing all the time. Also, to get started, make sure you've had a quick look at your constitutional law, because we're going to be touching on a lot of the same themes there. Now, we'll be returning to that theme again more next week, and we'll be making sure that you remember the important aspects of constitutional law as it flows on into here, because administrative law is another area of public law, and whereas constitutional law tends to be very, very sort of it's a very high and mighty area of law. It's involving the High Court. It's involving the Constitution. None of us will ever practice in there. And maybe one of you out there will be the one who will be the exception. But people are very, very unlikely to actually work in constitutional law. Administrative law, on the other hand, is completely the other end of the spectrum. It's where a lot of work gets done. And it's about not so much the compliance with the Constitution by lawmakers, but the compliance with the law of everyday bureaucrats and administrators, and all those terrible, annoying things they do to disadvantage people, to slow the machinery of justice, and basically to annoy everyone. So it's one of these areas of law that you can look at it in different ways, and for some people it's a very obtuse kind of theoretical area of law, but I don't like to think of it that way. I think it's one of the most practical areas of law, because it really focuses on everyday issues that people, individuals, members of the community, small businesses face in dealing with government and finding a way forward. And if you're someone who actually works on the other side of the field, and this is where our assessment becomes very important, we're going to look at how you design better systems. It's not just a case of legal conflict being the be-all and end-all. Let's look at building a better system, a fairer system, that you won't have to get into conflict, that you won't have to end up going to a court or a tribunal to deal with. So there's a lot of things to think about. Have a look at the notes, and we'll talk about this in the first workshop, and I look forward to seeing you then.